can you literally say, I've got this area, make me a map. The responses that came from board members and also on the floor at INTERGEO was quite insightful. The spoiler alert is we're not there. So in some ways, the data scientists are stepping in with their AI tools, but they can't deliver without the knowledge experts. And it's those knowledge experts which form a human in the loop validation to make sure that what the data scientists are producing in AI are sensible, are actually able to be used in practice.
Hello from the INTERGEO show here in Germany. My name's Aaron Addison, and welcome to the future of geospatial, where we explore the intersection of cutting-edge technology and the evolving landscape of spatial intelligence. In my role as Executive Director, I'm joined by Leonard Sands, and today we're diving into topics that are reshaping industries, societies, and even our understanding of reality itself. Technology disruption in geospatial and what comes next. In this, episode 2 of a series where we unpacked 4 key areas: the technical, the disruption we looked at in the last episode on how AI, edge computing, and AI algorithms are transforming geospatial workflows from real-time terrain modeling to predictive infrastructure planning. In today's episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into the business implications and what does this mean for companies. How do you build a future-ready geospatial strategy when the tools are evolving at faster than your clients need? So we'll explore businesses can adapt, invest, and lead the industry into the future together. In future episodes, we'll be exploring many new topics like policy and governance, our country-level industry, and specific policies keeping pace. Spoiler alert, not really. We examine where the gaps are, what needs to change to ensure not only proper use, but ethical, secure, and inclusive innovation. In another episode, we'll look at the human capital and ethics. We'll talk about the human side. How do we prepare geospatial professionals for a world where machines can do much of the technical heavy lifting? What skills will matter most? And how do we ensure that technology serves humanity and not the other way around?
Let's start with the big picture. We're living in a time where machines are no longer just tools. They're collaborators, decision makers, and in some cases, competitors. The rise of AI agents, autonomous systems, and predictive analytics has sparked a new wave of innovation. But it's also raised a fundamental question. What is the role of humans in a machine-driven world? This challenge, human versus machine, isn't just philosophical, it's practical, it's political, and it's personal. In the geospatial industry, we're seeing this tension play out in real time. From automated mapping to AI-driven site selection, the tools are evolving faster than humans respond to them. For example, the clients often are overwhelmed by the amount of data provided by the AI because they don't have the resources to respond to all of the risks identified. We'll unpack the next page of this journey.
Aaron, we've unfortunately had some technical mishaps. We're back now, so we're able to reflect on what we're down in Frankfurt at INTERGEO. But I think this is important, really important part of the podcast, which really tackles the big business implications with AI. And at that moment when we were sitting in the booth trying to record it, it didn't work, but we were taking ourselves out of INTERGEO at the time, and we were in our mind's eye going around the booths and actually seeing. You've got tech sensor providers, you've got tech digital companies, you've got even the service companies doing whatever geospatial capture and processing. And then we kind of like stepped back and said, okay, what are the implications for these businesses? What's going to happen if we were to jump forward, say, 2 years and come back to INTERGEO? What do we see different on the floor? And it was a really good conversation, which we need to have, and this is what we're doing today. So if you could actually help us bring us back to that moment and what you were thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I may be several thousand miles away from INTERGEO now, but certainly still on my mind and still processing all the happenings from last week. So it's great that we can still connect on this and really start to unpack what was happening there, but also where are things headed. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, it certainly was a feeling on the floor that AI was everywhere. It's almost like a throwaway tagline, right? Everyone was just putting AI on everything. It was badging AI, badging AI, and we know that AI is going to really drive a lot of change from business implications points, and particularly you could see the competitive advantage. All of them are advertising AI out there, whether you're in your sensors or you're in your digital tech stack or in your services. What what did we actually see that basically would come as a competitive advantage in AI to those business leaders out there?
Yeah, I think AI, as you said, is a little bit of everywhere. I feel like at times people are treating AI like salt and pepper. I'll just sprinkle some on whatever I've got, and it'll taste better. But of course, it's also making huge impacts. I think one of the things that I noted is that um, going beyond software and beyond algorithms, starting to see AI put into hardware, and that's gets to the idea of edge compute, which then we can facilitate agent-based AI and really start bringing some of these pieces to bear on the challenges of our time in geospatial. So that's exciting for me. And I remember talking and thinking through, a lot of companies here today, but who's still going to be here in 2 years when we come back? I don't know. I think it is the case with any new technology. Certainly, there will be some consolidation, some mergers, and things like that. But certainly, people who are staking out unique sensors, unique algorithms, unique services around AI. And so it's exciting to see that, of course, and to getting into business, which brings us into, sort of what's the competitive advantage of using AI, because it can get hard sometimes to separate the froth, the noise from what do I really need to pay attention to. And so I'm looking forward to unpacking that with you.
There was definitely a sense that there's some AI cloud there, some froth, as you're talking about. There's a bit of fudging in algorithms. There's some more analytical, stronger AI. But the one thing that we did throw in the board meeting was, can AI today, can you ask it, make me a map? Can you literally say, I've got this area, make me a map? And the responses that came from board members and also on the floor at INTERGEO was quite insightful. And the spoiler alert is we're not there. You can't just go and ask AI, make me a topographical map of Michigan.
Yeah.
And what was your feedback? What were you thinking when you kind of got that feedback from the
Yeah,
audience?
I think it's true. It's sort of it's everywhere and nowhere simultaneously in some respects, and so it's really hard to pin down, um, this thing called AI, and we have history of that with even geospatial with GIS. It's like, what is GIS? Well, it's sort of everywhere but nowhere at the same time, and that's been, both a plus and more of a challenge to our industry over the last several decades. But seeing how, bringing it back to your point, can it make me a map? Maybe, but is that the best use of the tool? Probably not. And I go back to conversations I had with when I was teaching around doing things like uh, regression. Can I do regression, statistical regression in a GIS package? Sure, but it's not fun. Can I make a map in R or in SPSS? Yeah, but it's not fun. And so really, I think AI falls into that same model of using the right tool for the job. Don't try to get it to do everything, but there will be things that it's very good at. And one of the ways that was explained to me, or not explained to me, but I heard somebody talking that resonated with me rather, is that AI is really good at tedious tasks. If you can break whatever your problem, whatever your process is, into a series of tedious tasks, then AI is probably a candidate to help you out. However, if you can't do that, or if there's even a portion of your workflow where you're not able to do that, then it's probably not the right tool for the job, and that's okay.
And it goes down to, it can't do the whole thing, at least for the moment. But there's steps in the workflow from the data capture point, the pre-processing, the processing, the feature extractions, and thereby even the insights analysis. There are steps in that workflow which AI can be applied to. It's not going to be the full workflow, but there's definitely areas at which can be leveraged. And that leads us to probably some of the business implications. Is there will be parts of those workflows out there which it could be from the owner perspective or even the contractor perspective that can yield the benefit in time. So speed of say processing, reduce cost of labor to actually do that step, and maybe more repeatable outcome. So there may be an average quality improvement where AI can actually do it day in, day out, boring task, but literally get you to a higher average quality standard. What did you see on the floor around specific tasks? And probably this is the next one. It goes into workforce transformation. If you've got that segment of the workflow, and you're contemplating putting AI in there, then there's that consequence of workforce that comes with any business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just again, we have historical models for this. So we used to use plane tables to do topographic survey, and now we rely on LiDAR, we rely on Earth observation, and so you just see an evolution of these technologies that are producing better data at a lower cost, but don't eliminate the need for experts to be in the value chain, right? And so in the workforce side, I think people who understand the algorithms, certainly we're seeing algorithms that can do, for instance, point classification of point cloud data. That's great, because that is a tedious task, as we were alluding to earlier. But you need somebody who can look at that and say, okay, was it done correctly? Or did I get the results out of this process that I expected to get? And I think that's where we run a elevated risk of perhaps trusting AI too much. So in research, we have a model of trust but verify. And that's the part I think we need to elevate the conversation around AI. Is right now I feel like in some cases we're in a trust, right? So we're just assuming that the results that come out of some of these tools are right. And they very well may be right. But it is incumbent on anybody who's engaged in this work professionally to verify, to make sure that these automated sensors, processes, and so forth are producing what we believe them to be producing, so that we're not making bad maps and we're not influencing decisions and decision makers with incorrect information.
So in some ways, the data scientists are stepping in with their AI tools, but they can't deliver without the knowledge experts. And it's those knowledge experts which form a human in the loop validation to make sure that what the data scientists are producing in AI are sensible, are actually able to be used in practice.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example of where this can really go awry. Is that you take census data, and this would be true for any country in the world that collects census data. And I say, okay, I want to calculate the change over time between the two census intervals. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, so forth. And so I collect the population at one point, collect the same data point later. I do some simple arithmetic, and I come up with a percent change in the population. You say, okay, well, can that, I'm seeing an elevated population growth of 60% for this area. Is that even possibly correct? Right. And so not even looking at it to say, is it truly correct, but is that even in the realm of possibility for that answer? And if all you're doing is looking at a thematic map with polygons on it, you may say, yeah, I mean, I have no reason not to believe that the AI or that the processing automation took care of that correctly. It's only whenever I add in, say, aerial photo or satellite photo that I find out that the area I'm looking at is a railroad or it's a cemetery or it's a park. And that's where we need that domain expertise, that
Domain
critical eye.
expertise.
You may hear the term critical thinking. They're all the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
am I getting out of this process what I thought I should be getting out of this process? And so I think that again is where workforce really pivots to in a bigger way moving forward, and less on the mundane tasks, as you mentioned, of the collection and the assembly and the transformations of data and things like that. So because once we sort of zero in and we fine tune those processes, of course, that's when we can really add a lot of capacity, a lot of possibility into our everyday lives.
So we're seeing ahead of us something very similar to what you mentioned just briefly. You talked about survey tables and you talked about LiDAR data, that transition from what was the analog approach to making maps to actually now the digital approach. In that transition, there became a fusion of the surveyor and the digital expert. In the same way it's playing out now, we're seeing that fusion from a data analyst and the domain expert, whether it might be a survey expert as well. But there's going to be this fusion in the role capability that's going to play out. And the university is going to probably pick it up pretty soon because they typically the ones to feed that newer generation. But the mid career and later career is going to be a different experience for them.
I think it will be. Certainly, universities do excellent work, but there is, as you know, a time lag between when they start teaching and even in the best of cases, let's say AI shifts today, that's an 18-month to 2-year process for them to get all their curriculum updated and everything else. And then you still have to graduate students and talent through that program. So it is going to be something that happens quite quickly. Again, I take comfort in that this is not new. This is not unprecedented. And we can look at that, as you mentioned, from plane table to to a total station, to LiDAR, et cetera. But we can also look at something like BIM. BIM modeling, you have to know some IT in order to make BIM works, right? So you need this domain expertise from IT married or working complementary with domain expertise from architecture, from construction, et cetera, in order to really make the power of BIM, unleashed. And that's going to be true for AI as well. As you mentioned, data analysts or data scientists, they're going to come into this equation, but they're not going to have the domain expertise that they need for civil engineering or for environmental engineering, et cetera. So I think it's again, yes, we have to cross all that ground, but take comfort in the fact that we have done it and we know how to do that based over the last 50 years.
And the key takeaway on that point is it's not going to take 18 months. It's going to take a bit longer, 2-3 years before you start to actually see the real industry change be faced. So we have some time at the moment. Maybe AI is going to jump ahead at a few places, but there's generally a human change at play.
So I think it's going to be the companies and the use cases that understand and embrace that approach, because there are ways to differentiate your services based on AI today, and that's great. I think where there's rising concern among the industry, certainly this would be true with WGIC, are some of the companies that seemingly pop up overnight make a lot of promises around AI technology and then can't deliver, right? So that impacts the entire industry and their reputation. So again, let's come back to something that we all know and have heard, is that if it seems like it's too good to be true, that's an opportunity to pause and verify, is that even possibly correct, right? And that's where I think that's going to be the differentiator between who's still at INTERGEO 2 years from now and who's not.
Yeah. And that goes on to our next point, is the investment strategy. If you're looking at your business implications going forward, where do you invest? Either are you doing an acquisition, a merger with a company to actually bring in that in-house and become more AI robust or competent? Or are you going to invest into the AI tooling at an early stage that you actually start to be the early adopter of AI tooling into it? There's pros and cons for all of it. It really comes, and it comes back to the human again, doesn't it? Do you want to be ahead of the pack? Do you want to actually jump and then take the first jump advantage, or do you want to actually just wait for that dust to settle, leave all of the unproven cases behind, and then take it? What are you thinking in that space?
Well, I don't think you can ignore it, certainly, or you ignored it sort of your own peril. So let's take that one off the table. But I also don't think it's smart to go, and put all your eggs into that basket necessarily. Certainly, you want to find ways that you can investigate and do meaningful things with AI, not just be using AI for the sake of AI. I think that's where I would tend to focus my attention in my investment strategy, because you are going to see it show up in different areas. But if you wait until all the dust has settled, then obviously you've left some opportunity on the table. So you probably don't want to be there as well. I think the main thing for AI that concerns me is when I see people taking or making investments that, if they don't turn out well, represent existential risks to their business or to their company. And that's where, I'd have to stop and say, okay, what are we doing here, in service of what? Right. And so there's some clearly defined things where you can start to look at that now. But there are going to be some things that, where people were chasing the shiny object or reaching for the brass ring and not really knowing why. And that may not turn out as productive as they had hoped.
Yeah, it's certainly, going back to the competitive advantage point, where we see high touch on processing, high touch on anything that's in that workflow, is certainly going to be a target for it could be an investment strategy for a business, or a rework in the workflow. So good. Now, on the risk and resilience, as it comes down to that original point about trust, it gets down to where we are today at trust. Do we trust AI? Do we actually believe in the journey? Is it a bubble? Is it .com? Is it truly going to play out? And there's this play of risk and resilience in geospatial. And how can we play out as a business implication for positioning in the right place at the right time? Where can these business owners actually get information that can help them make a decision?
So I really am not a fan of reinventing the wheel. So I constantly am looking for examples where I can transfer them from one domain to the other. Luckily, on risk and resilience, we have a model in geospatial through weather forecasting. So if somebody says, "Oh, there's a 60% chance of rain today," and you or I elect to not take our umbrella, and we get rained on, we don't blame the forecast. We made an informed decision. We assume the risk based on that information. We, over time, may decide that model's not a good model. We may start looking to a different model to tell us whether or not it's going to rain. That idea, I think, has utility within geospatial outputs that we're not using right now. Now, some of these things are clearly not candidates for 60%. For instance, you don't want a 60% chance that the ambulance is going to show up at the right address, right? That's a different calculation, and we'll have models for that. But I think risk is, again, not necessarily trying to do the same thing for every single output, but again, is the risk commensurate with the output? Is is it fit for purpose around that? And the same with resilience. I think understanding that in the context of geospatial, but more importantly in the domain in which it's being used, which is what I think you're driving at, is to say, okay, why should I believe your map? And that, I think, opens up opportunities for companies that want to be experts as an information intermediary, a data authenticator. Is this data set authentic? Is this satellite image authentic?
Yep.
And again, why should I believe you? But what we're seeing now, and this came up in several panel discussions as well as the WGIC meetings, is around fake maps, and the fact that we are in a world today where the best of us in geospatial, our senior image analysts with various companies, have said, we have now seen images that we could not tell were faked by AI, right? And so that feels like a moment where we all need to take a step back and take a breath and say, okay, where do we go from here? Do we want to continue down sort of this noisy path where risk becomes untenable, right? Because that all ends in a day of reckoning for what we do.
Yeah.
Or do we want to really contemplate, collaborate around a community to say, okay, how are we going to address this authentication issue for these data sets?
Which takes us to the final point, is the social impact. And that social impact can come in many dimensions. And what the simple example at INTERGEO in the after the event of the day, the team of us at Fugro went out and we said, okay, we want to go and have a meal. So immediately what you're doing is you're plugging in geospatial questions, relevance on, I'm looking for a restaurant within my area. So spatially, what's around me? What are the options? I'm also looking for a restaurant that is actually authentic from Frankfurt or German. And I'm looking for actually an experience of X points, on a scale of 10. So you start to see that more and more geospatial data and the leveraging of that geospatial through AI is becoming socially more impactful today, because you're able to really pin down a lot of the things that in your daily, personal, even professional life can be leveraged for benefit.
Yeah. And, so we, the quote that the future is here, is just not evenly distributed, is sort of relevant here. And I think, whether we're talking about democratizing data and making it available to all people, not just the people who have the right mobile device, have the right subscription to a service, becomes very important, because it is in every aspect of our lives, whether we're looking for restaurants, transportation, local services, a meetup point for a meeting, it's all relevant. And so finding ways that we can do that in a healthy, productive way instead of a dividing way, I think is a very important part of that societal impact and having a positive future. Maybe not so much for me and you, but certainly for our children and for our children's children.
Brilliant. Hey, it's been a great pleasure with you again, Aaron.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, our wonderfully curated session that we had in INTERGEO couldn't be recorded. There was a tech problem. We'll solve it next time.
Yeah.
But I'd like to really close this out and say thank you. And we'll be back for another 2 episodes. which will cover on some deeper topics to do with data governance or the governance and policies of what we're going forward, and we'll save the other juicy topic for later that we'll disclose. But hey, great to talk with you, and everyone out there, keep the trust up, believe in the direction, and always ask for validation is the key takeaway from this session today. There is going to be business disruption, but hey, there is change at place, and we have to embrace change or otherwise be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard.